And shalom. Hello. Good evening. Baruch haba. We welcome you. And we are studying, in this portion, we are studying what is called in Hebrew, Etz Chayim. Etz Chayim. Etz tree Chayim, the tree of life. And basically what the tree of life is it consists of the attributes of God. And because in Reshit, in the book of Genesis, we are told that we are created B'Tselem Elohim. Everyone say B'Tselem Elohim. In Tselem, the image Elohim of God. We are created in the image of God. The word Tselem is actually rooted in the word shadow. Everyone say shadow.
Shadow.
It is rooted in the word shadow. To be in the image means to be as his shadow. Okay? So when in the book of Genesis it says that God said, let us create man in our image. And then later on it says, I believe in Genesis chapter 8 in the story of Noah, it says that man was created in the image of God. B'Tselem Elohim. Literally that we are his shadow. If you look down on the floor, you have the light above you. If you look down on the floor, you should be able to see your shadow. Unless you're Peter Pan and your shadow has escaped somewhere. Alright? So you should be able to look down and see your shadow. If you look down, everybody do so. Look down and see your shadow. And you will notice that your shadow is in the likeness of you. That is, it is in your image. Does this mean that your shadow looks exactly like you? Does this mean that your shadow looks exactly like you? No. But what? It has some of your shape, some of your form, even though it does not have all of your defining characteristics. It has some of you. Okay? So it is your shadow. So we are created B'Tselem Elohim. We are created as the shadow, or in the image, in the likeness of God. Alright? So, what does this mean? This means that we have within us, what is the shadowing of God, the likeness, the image of God? This is that we have these attributes of God within ourselves. There is an interesting discussion. Rashi makes an interesting comment in this week's Parsha concerning Noah. Because at the end of the flood, God forbids the taking or the shedding of the blood of another human being. And Rashi asks the question as to why. Why does he forbid the taking? And the commandment is that upon the shedding, that is upon the murder of another human being, that if you shed the blood of another human being, that what? That your own blood shall be shed. Saying what? If you take the life of another human being, that your life will also be taken. And the reason that God gives for this is B'Tselem Elohim, because we are created in the image of God. Thus, in taking the life of another, that is in murder, okay, we're not talking warfare and these kinds of things. We're talking murder that is in premeditated murder, because if you accidentally kill someone, that is not considered that type of murder. And guess what? Your life is not required of you. You are permitted to live. But if you, in a premeditated way, take the life of someone else, God requires that your own life is to be taken. And the reason for this, Rashi says in his explanation, the reason for this is that you have struck at the image of God, that this person is as the shadow of God, as the image of God, the likeness of God. Not that he is God, but that he contains within him the attributes that God contains, that he's created as the shadow, in the image of God. Thus, striking him, you are in effect doing what? Striking God. Do you see that? So we have some parents here. How many of you adults here have children? You have children? If I went after your children. How would you feel if I went after your child? How would you feel about that? If I went after your child,
we're very mad.
You would become angry with me, would you not? Why? Why do you become angry? Because that child is, we could say that that child is what? Your flesh and blood, correct? This is your flesh and blood. Therefore, for me to go after your child is for me to do what? Go after you. To attack your child is to attack you. So, how many times have we said that? If you go after him, you're coming after me. Right? To attack this person is to attack. To attack my child, that's to attack me. Huh? You ever, I know in school, a teacher or someone, an administrator, someone in authority would get on the case of a child, would get on a child, and the child would be sent to the office or this or that or what, and what happens the next thing you know, what? The parent is there at the school wanting to talk to the principal, wanting to talk to the teacher. Why? Because to attack the child is to attack the parent. This is God's perspective. Therefore, to attack another human being is as though you are attacking God himself. We're not talking self-defense and these kinds of things. But this is why. So, B'Tselem Elohim. So, we have these attributes within us. So, what we have been talking about lately, we were out a few weeks because of the high holidays, because of the festivals, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, and now we're back. And so, we've been talking, we went through the Sephirah, the attribute of Malchut, of the kingdom, and now we're talking about Yesod, the foundation. And where we are tonight concerning the foundation is this. It is not sufficient. It is not good enough. It is not sufficient to think good thoughts. It is not sufficient, it is not good enough simply to think of doing good or to think good thoughts. What good is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is a commandment or a good deed, a good work. What good is a good work? What good is obedience to a commandment if all I do is think about it? So I was talking to someone the other day. They wanted some advice, and so I was talking to them the other day concerning this question that they had and the advice that they wanted. And I asked them, as I often ask you, do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm getting at? And this person said, yes. And I said to this person, what are you going to do about it? Right? Then what are you going to do about it? And the person's response was, you know what the response was? I'll think about it. Saying what? Probably not going to go the direction that the advice was going to take them. Going to think about it. Usually when the response of one being advised is, I'll think about it, usually that means inaction. No action taken. Right? The same thing is true with this phrase, and we're going to get into this even more deeply in just a little bit. The same thing is also true with this phrase. I will pray about it. I will pray about it. When I say I will pray about it, and you'll see what I mean in just a little bit, when I say I will pray about it, that usually means no action taken. In effect, we use this as an escape hatch. as a way out. And this is why Judaism teaches this, that it is not sufficient simply to think of doing good or to think good thoughts. It doesn't do anyone any good. Yes?
Okay. I have something in this book that I've been thinking about. It's a person in Facebook in the Christianity page. Someone that is not in my friend list. Saying something that I read. And lately he has been sick. And the last comment that he placed was that he has been at the hospital for a month.
Right.
And he needs help. Maybe you know.
Correct. Yes.
So the previous poll that he had, I wanted to do something for him, right? And I say, okay, so and that was something that I wanted. Actually, I wanted to talk today because I know that people here actually know him, right? And I was thinking we can put something together, a little money so we can send him because it seems like he's in a lot of distress.
Right.
So that was something that I wanted to do, that I wanted to ask, and because I know, I'm not a good prayer.
Right.
I can say that. That's why I even offer pray for someone, because I think that maybe that's not going to work in my case. I don't know. So, but I think that he needs more than that.
So let's use that kind of as an example. No name from Cordero. But I will be honest with you and tell you that I get somewhat irritated when a prayer request, not mine, someone else's, a prayer request gets posted on Facebook, particularly on our page, and it has 3 likes, and 2 or 3, 4 people say, praying for you, or what have you. And what people perhaps don't realize, I don't know, but on our Facebook page, on the private page, on our Facebook page, you can look off to the side there, and it tells you not only how many, but it tells you who has seen the page.
Yep.
And it is distressing to me that we have over 150 people on that page, and you will get 2 or 3, 4, 5 people that like it, that will click the like button, which basically means what? When you click like, saying what? I'm praying, okay, right? And I will do that sometimes. I'm at work. I work like everybody else. I've got a 40-hour week, and so I don't have a lot of time. And so if I see something like that, then I'll click the like button. And that's going to take us into another situation. But it's distressing for me, so those of our group that are watching on Facebook, pay attention to this. It's distressing to me that people, that certain people, not placing particular blame here, but that as a group, we don't take the time to stop and say, I'm praying for you. When someone posts a prayer request, it is for that information to go to you so that you might take it above, before the throne. And the reason why this saddens me is because there will come a day in your life
that we will need those prayers.
That you will need the prayer. And if it's someone who's in distress, someone who's depressed, someone who is anxious and these things, and you only have a couple of people saying, well, I'm praying for you, what have you, what does that do to the person putting the request up? Discouraging. Discouraging. These people don't care. And so that's one aspect of this. Okay? The second aspect is this. We must be very, very careful. When I say I am praying for you, when I say pray, I better be praying. Because it is a habitual thing for us. We are creatures of habit. We're like water. Water takes the easiest route. Right? So it's very easy to click like. And it's very easy to post praying for you or what have you. But if I click that I'm praying, I click like, indicating that I'm praying, or I state that I'm praying, remember that God is watching, that God is knowing, that God sees everything. And if I say that I'm praying and I don't pray, then what? I have lied. And I have not only lied to you, but I have lied before God, in His face. Does everybody understand this? Do you suppose that God takes this seriously? Do you suppose that God takes this seriously? Yes, He does. Yes, He does.
And that's why I don't say pray, that I will pray that often when somebody's asking for prayers, but I'm always make sure that I include that person.
Sure. And the truth is at that moment, just stop at that moment. Does it really take you that long to bring this person or their problem before the throne of God and acknowledge them before Him and ask for Him to have His way? We're not asking you to spend hours and hours in prayer. Some people will, but that's not what we're asking. We're simply asking for you to join with our heart. Why? Because where 2 or 3 are gathered together, what? And what 2 or 3 ask in my name, what? So you see, this is the idea that's behind this, that we're joining together as a group, beseeching the Father, so that He hears us. That He hears you as an individual, that He hears us as a group. Okay? So, yes?
One little side note that we may not realize, where it says, you know, who or how many people have seen this post. Facebook may count it as being seen, even if a corner of that post is showing at the bottom of your page, even if you didn't actually read it or it didn't come up to the full.
Right.
So it's, I'm just saying it's possible that
sure.
It may not have been actually seen by all of those people when Facebook counts it as being seen.
Everybody may not have, but I know what happens, and the vast majority, yes, the vast majority are seeing it, and they're basically it's being ignored. Okay, that's my point.
Yes, let's not ignore it.
We are forbidden of ignoring the problems, the circumstances, and the situations of other people. We're going to get into that as we get further into the tree of life. It is absolutely forbidden in Judaism, it is absolutely forbidden to ignore the circumstances of another human being. We are to take notice of that. Not only are we to take notice of that, but we also are required to take action when we notice something. Okay? Therefore what? I am responsible for you, you are responsible for me, we're responsible for one another. Okay? So, back to the point here, it's not sufficient, it is not sufficient simply to think of doing good or to think good thoughts. Okay? So, it's saying that the mitzvah does not count simply because it exists in my brain. The good work, the good deed does not exist simply because it exists in my brain or it exists in my heart. Because you've heard the old saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. This is in effect what this phrase means. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. What? I intended to do this, I intended to do that. How many have ideas that pop into our head of how we can help this person or help that person, how I can do this and how I can do that, and yet we never act on it. And the way that God views these are as missed opportunities on my account, on my behalf. I'm missing the opportunity. I'm missing the opportunity of not just of helping someone, but I'm missing the opportunity of being a blessing to someone. I'm missing the opportunity of becoming involved with God in Tikkun Ha'olam, in the rectification of the world. We're studying on Shabbat afternoons in our Judaism 101 class. We're studying the purpose of creation. And the purpose of creation, the statement, and this is the Ramchal, Rabbi Lusado, in his Derech Hashem, the Way of God. And he states the purpose of creation is that we may, to the effect that we may work hand in hand with God. The reason why God created the way He did and what He did is so that we could work alongside Him. That we could work beside Him. I remember when I was a young man and Richard was a little boy. And I think I've told this story before. Richard was a little boy. I was working in construction back then. And so I had my construction belt, I had my tool belt, right? I had my hammer, my square, my tape, my pencil, nails, all of the tools of the trade. And I would come home and I would walk in the door and I would lay my belt on the table or what have you. And Richard, 3, 4 years old, as many children do, wanted to emulate me. He looked up to me and he wanted to do what I did. I was his dad. I was his daddy, and he wanted to be like me. And one day, Mama asked him what he wanted to do when he grew up. They called him Choo Choo. That was his nickname, Choo Choo. And so she said, Choo Choo, what do you want to do when you grow up? And he looked up at me and he smiled and he said, I want to be a worker man. A worker man. What's a worker man? A worker man. Because why? Well, I was in the construction industry. And so he wanted to be like me. So he was given a tool belt for his birthday or something, and he was given a little plastic tool belt. It had a little plastic hammer, a screwdriver, and all of the things. One day we went up to my brother's house. He lived up in Mission. We went up there for Thanksgiving or something, and the heater was his heater. He had a furnace in the house that heated the house, and it wasn't working right. And so he asked me if I would take a look at it. And so we took the front panel off of the heater. It was one of the, big one, and took the front panel off of it. And I was down there, and I had a flashlight, and I was looking in there, and there was Richard. Right next to me, I was on my hands and knees and I was looking, and there's Richard right next to me also looking, and like I couldn't see in because Richard's head was in the way. And Mom took a picture of it. I don't know if she still has the picture, but for years she had the picture of me down on my hands and knees looking in the furnace, and Richard right next to me on his hands and knees also looking in the furnace. That the Son wants to be like the Father. This is why we call Him what? Father. In Hebrew, we say Avinu Shebshamayim, our Father, Avinu, our Father, which is in heaven. Saying what? We want to emulate Him. We want to be like Him. So even as Richard wanted to what? He wanted to be with me in my work, to do what I was doing. So we should desire, God created us with the desire to join Him. Our purpose is to join Him in His work, in His efforts in this creation, in this world. To join Him in His efforts, in His work among our fellow human beings. And so it is that we are helping out others, but the other side of that, it is also that we're joining God in His work. in His effort. And God uses you and God uses me to help out those who are in need. That's why we are here. We are not here to gain substance, to gain wealth, and to gain these things. And God blesses with these things, good. But my purpose in being here, that is not my goal. That is not my aim. My goal and my aim is to be a help to other people, to help out those who are in need. Therefore, you remember we discussed how the distinction in our alphabet, the distinction between the chet and the tet and the yud. The chet and the tet from potential to actual. That the woman, the virgin, which is the chet, the virgin has potential of bringing forth children, where the tet, representing the bride in the chamber, the bride, becoming impregnated, becoming pregnant, and thus what? Bringing forth the child, saying what? From potential to actual. How many of you remember that? And this runs through Judaism. This of going from potential, that everyone has the potential. Everyone has the potential to do good. But not everyone brings that potential to reality, into actuality. And this is the issue. Because this is our purpose. My purpose is not just to have potential. My purpose is to bring that potential to reality, to make it actual. So that the virgin who marries her groom becomes pregnant and brings forth a child. As the virgin, as the engaged one, she has the potential to bring forth the child. As the wife, she actually brings forth the child. Bringing the thought, in other words, bringing the thought to action, bringing the thought to reality. This is what is called bearing fruit. When a woman gives birth to a child, what has she done? She has brought forth fruit. When a tree has a potential, correct? In the blossoming stage, it's telling you what? It has the potential to give its fruit. But what? Does it always give forth fruit? No. I have a pecan tree my dad planted years ago. That pecan tree is big, it's mature, it's been there for 25 years. Every year, the same thing. Like Yosemite Sam in Bugs Bunny, right? Every day, the same old thing. Every year, the same thing. I want my Hassan Fip. Oh, sorry. Things pop into my head. Every year, the same thing. It drops a handful of pecans. Here it is, a full mature. 1 year, I actually got 5 pounds of pecans off of that tree. 1 year. I mean, it was about 3 years ago. It was dropping pecans all over the place. And I was literally we had a squirrel that lived on the canal bank, lived in the trees. And we lived next to a canal bank, and there's trees there in the ditch, big, tall trees. And this squirrel lived up in the trees. And I had to race the squirrel for the pecans. Fighting the squirrel. My ADHD was intact at that time. Squirrel! But anyway. So I would get home from work, and I would get my bowl, and I would fill up my bowl with all the pecans, and I would see the squirrel out there running, and he'd get mad. He'd be up in the tree, chattering at me because I was stealing his pecans. Just because a tree blossoms, that means what? If it blossoms, it has the potential But what is the actual? The reality is not what until the pecans are there intact to be harvested. The same thing is true with our lives, your life, my life. All of us have potential with these 10 attributes, these 10 sefirot of God. We all have the potential to live in the image of God, to be in His likeness. But not everyone does. And in fact, sadly, the truth is most do not. Most do not. And so this whole idea of going from potential to actual, you've heard me speak of it so often. It runs throughout Judaism. And here it also, we also find it. What? That the thought that stays embedded in the brain, that stays embedded in the heart, and never comes to fruition, is worth what? As much as the pecan on the tree that never comes forth. There's only that blossom, and that's it. And the seed is never produced. And what is the benefit of that? Saying that the benefit of your good idea is of no value until it becomes actuality. There is no benefit of a good desire or a good wish that is not brought forth, that does not produce fruit. As long as it only stays in my brain, as long as it only stays in my heart, and it never comes out into the actual world, into actual reality, it's of no value. It benefits no one. It doesn't even benefit me. It only ever remains as potential, as a seed. So recently we've witnessed some hurricanes come against this country. Houston, Florida, Puerto Rico. And I say, in my head, in my heart, I would like to help. Thousands of people said in their heads and in their hearts, I would like to help. I will tell you that far fewer thousands actually did. Why? Because our human nature doesn't stay on track and on course. We think about something and then something else distracts us. Squirrel. Something else distracts us and off we go on that tangent. You see, the truth is this, and I'm not scolding you, I'm just being honest with you. Judaism is also blunt. I'm being honest with you. There is not a person in this room who does not have $1 that they could spare. Correct?
Yeah.
Can I spare $1 to help a person in need? The answer is, for most of us, yes. For most of us, yes. And okay, so perhaps you can't spare $1. Perhaps you could go to one of the entities, one of the charities who is, and you can help. If you do not have money to donate, you can donate time, you can donate effort, you can donate physical labor. There are many ways in which we can help. I'm just using this as one example because it's something that, what? It only hit up the road from us. Literally 2 hours up the road from you and me, this hurricane came through with all of its force. It could have been us. So what I'm saying is, It's not good enough for me to simply think about donating to a good cause. It's not enough for me to think about helping out in charitable work, in helping out the needy. It's not good enough. How many of us have said somebody should do something about that? You're going to hear a lot of this in Netzach when we get into Netzach. Somebody should do something. You've heard it, you've said it. The truth is this, the somebody is you. The reason why God puts something in front of you, the reason why you see it, is because God wants you to do something about it. God is in absolute control. We believe this, that God is in absolute control of every situation, in every circumstance, in every human person's life, in everything in this universe. Therefore, when something happens in front of you, when you see something, the reason why you saw it is because God revealed it to you. It does not happen by chance. It does not happen by accident. In fact, in Hebrew, there is no word perchance. There is no word chance. There is no word good luck. There is no word luck. Because nothing happens by luck, nothing happens by fortune, nothing happens by chance. Everything happens by the will of God. Therefore, in Hebrew, there is no word for that sentiment. How do you say good luck in Hebrew? Mazel tov. Yet what does mazel tov actually mean? It does not mean good luck. Good future. To have a good future. So, it is not sufficient to have a good thought. It is not sufficient to have a good idea. It is not sufficient to have a good intention. It is not until these things are brought into the realm of reality, into the realm of actuality, that they are productive. Saying, because, remember how we started out, I'll pray about it. Remember those words?
Yeah.
Praying about a mitzvah, about a good work, about obedience to a commandment is insufficient. It is not sufficient to pray. In fact, I will tell you that most of the time it is not even necessary. As I started out, we spiritualize. This comes, this is frequent in Christianity and in churches. You ask someone for a favor or these kinds of things, and the answer is what? Come on, the answer is what? I'll pray about it. I'll pray about it. Somebody asks you for help in this way or that way, and the response is, I'll pray about it. I will tell you that the majority of the time, that simply is a polite way of saying no. This is truth. I have been at this for 40 years. I have been doing this for 40 years. I know people, and I've seen it over and over again. Most of the time, when people have told me, I will pray about it, that's the last I heard. You'll remember last year when Joseph Mendes came and he asked us to help. He asked for help because he was going to China to take the word there. And he had to raise the funds to go. And do you remember what he said? Because he marveled at this assembly. So I fussed at us, right, to begin. So I'm going to end up with a good note for us. That he marveled at us, that he was amazed, because when he called and asked, when he got a hold and asked if he could come and present what he was doing, where he was going, and all of these things, I told him, absolutely. come and present your word, and we will help you as best we can. What he marveled at was that I did not say, we will pray about it, because he said this to this group when he was standing here. And he said, every other congregation, organization responded to him with the words, I will pray about it. And none of them got back to him. Because we spiritualize our negativity. Let me say this again. We spiritualize our negativity. We spiritualize our saying no. This is, we can say no and not feel bad about it because we made it a spiritual thing. Saying what? You do not need to pray about a mitzvah. You do not need to pray about doing a good deed, about doing something good for someone. In fact, in Judaism, we are required to help where we can help. This is what the term mitzvah means. It's not just that it is a good deed, but it is commanded of us. We are commanded to assist anyone in need. We are commanded, if you come to me with a need and I have the ability to meet that need, God requires me to help you. And it does not matter station or position in life. It does not matter what the person's station or position is. If I have the means to fill a need in someone's life, God expects me to do that. Whether the person is of means or not of means. Once again, when we get into Netzach in a few weeks, you will hear much about this. Why? Do you remember what the very first thing was that we started off tonight? Remember we started talking about B'Tselem Elohim, that we were created how? In the image of God. I am created in the image of God. But what I need to remember is that not only am I created in the image of God, you are also created in the image of God. And it's not just people of faith, and it's not just religious people who are created in the image of God. Every single human being is created in the image of God. Therefore, to turn away from another human being who is in need is to turn away from one who is created in the image of God. Do you remember what I said about Noah? About the parsha for this week, Genesis chapter 8. And why God requires the blood of one who murders in a premeditated way. Why is blood required from that one? Because to strike another in a premeditated way, to strike another is in effect to do what? To strike at God. Therefore, because you are created, B'Tselem Elohim, because you are created in the image, in the likeness, as the shadow of God, when you are in need, and I have the ability to fill that need, and I turn away from that, I am in effect turning away from God Himself. Because to do it to you is to do it to Him. Why? To do it to your child is as though I did it, what? to you? Yeshua said that. Very good. That's where we're headed. What did Yeshua say? When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you visited me. When I was sick, you prayed for me. And they said to him, Master, when did we do these things? As much as you have done it unto the least of these, you have done it unto me. But then what is the opposite to that? What does he say? In opposition, he says, when I was hungry, you did not feed me. When I was thirsty, you did not give me drink. When I was naked, you did not clothe me. When I was in prison, you did not visit me. When I was sick, you did not pray for me. When did we not do these things? In that you did not do it to the least of these, so you did not do it to me. Saying what? Saying that when I do this for you, it is as though I'm doing it for God, why you are created in His image. And these are things I do not need to pray about. I do not have to ask permission for something I've already been commanded to do. I come home from school. I get off the bus. I walk in the house. We had a routine. We would go in and Mom and Dad would usually be there in the kitchen. Sometimes Dad would be out and about. But we had the infamous list posted on the refrigerator. I say infamous because it was the chores that Dad had for us to do when we got home from school. And Dad would have the list of the names of all the children and what our chores were for that afternoon. And he expected, i.e. required them to be done by the time he got home from wherever he was, as well as doing our homework and all of these other things. So Dad would have on the list, Ed, dishes, sweep and mop kitchen floor, finish homework. Right? Those are my chores. So Dad would come home. Then the dishes still are probably in the sink, the floor is still dirty, and my homework's not done. And what do you suppose Dad would say? What is Dad's position towards me now? Slightly irritated? And he would say, why haven't you done the dishes? Why haven't you started the dishes? How come the floor's not swept them up? And how come you haven't started your homework? Well, I was waiting for you to come home so I could ask your permission to do the dishes. And I was going to ask your permission if I could sweep them off the floor and if I could do my homework, if I could start my homework. Do you see what I'm saying? Dad had already what? He had already ordered me to do these things. He had already commanded me to do these things. Therefore, what? Do I need to ask permission to do what I've already been commanded to do? No. The expectation is already there. What do you suppose my dad would have said if I told him, or if he comes home and I would walk out to the car after he's already written on the note, right? Written on the note, and do the dishes, sweep them off the floor, and finish your homework. And I would go out to the car when he comes home and I would say, Dad, is it okay if I do the dishes? Do you see the foolishness of this? The same is true in my relationship with God. I do not have to ask Him permission to do what He's already commanded me to do. And He has already commanded me to be of help to those who are in need. Not me alone, but all of us. Every single one of us. When I see a person in need, my responsibility is to do whatever I can to help that person. If I have the means to help that person, then I'm to use my means to help that person. If I do not have the means, then I'm to be the conduit to find the means to help that person. Do you see what I'm saying? Rather than just driving by and saying, those poor people. Rather than just saying, somebody should do something about that. Because to drive by and have the thought in my head, those poor people, is to do nothing. And to drive by and to say, somebody should do something about that, is to do nothing. So the book of James, Yaakov in Hebrew. Yaakov, the book of James, chapter 2. Yaakov is the brother of Yeshua, of Jesus. And he wrote this book. He is called in Hebrew, but he's mentioned in the Talmud, he's called Yaakov HaTzadik, James the Just. And he is spoken very well of by in Judaism as a very good man. That he was a very noble person, much admired by all who lived in Jerusalem. Verse 5 of chapter 2. Yaakov, the book of James, chapter 2. He says, listen, my dear brothers and sisters. Did not God choose the poor in this world to be rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom? Amachut, what we were talking about before, the kingdom that he promised to those who love him. But you have dishonored the poor person. You have dishonored them. How have you dishonored them? By spiritualizing your rejection of them. By spiritualizing my negativity towards them. By saying, how did we say? How do we spiritualize our rejection and our negativity? By saying what? I will pray God. Look at what he says. You have dishonored the poor person. Isn't it the rich who oppress you and drag you into court? Do they not blaspheme the good name by which you are called? If, however, you fulfill the royal law according to the scripture, if you are to fulfill, how do you say law in Hebrew? Torah. If you fulfill the Torah according to scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. This is not a Christian idea. This is not a church idea. This is Torah. When Yeshua says it in the book of Matthew that you shall love your neighbor as yourself, he is in fact quoting the book of Deuteronomy. He's quoting Torah. You shall love your neighbor as yourself, you do well. But if you show favoritism, you are committing sin. What does sin mean? Falling short. You're not fulfilling. What? You are not bringing potential to actual. This is what falling short is. You have the potential to hit the mark, but you're not reaching your potential. You're not bringing it to actuality. If you show favoritism, you are committing sin, and you are convicted by Torah as a transgressor. For whoever keeps the whole Torah but stumbles in one point has become guilty of all. For the one who said do not commit adultery also said do not commit murder. Now if you do not commit adultery but do not commit murder, you have become a transgressor of the Torah. So speak and act as those who will be judged according to the Torah. That gives freedom. Notice the Torah is not binding. It gives you what? Freedom. For judgment is merciless to the one who does not show mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. This is not some... People stop there and they take that section of scripture and they stumble all over it. And by doing so, they take it out of context and they twist what it's saying. what he's repeating there is actually Torah. Saying what when he says judgment is merciless to the one who does not show mercy. Why? Because God judges you on how you treat other people. Yeshua said this, did he not? That God will forgive those who do what? Come on, God will forgive those who do what? Who forgive others. But if you are not willing to forgive others, then what? God is not willing to forgive you. God shows mercy to those who show mercy, but he will not show mercy to those who do not show mercy. Therefore, when you show kindness to a stranger, God will show kindness to you. When you fulfill the need of a person who is in need, when you fulfill a person who is in need, when you fulfill that need, God will also fulfill your needs. But if you withhold from someone who is in need, guess what? God will withhold from you. This is also Judaism 101. It's called measure for measure. That God treats you measure for measure the way you treat others. Yeshua taught this in the Brit Hadashah, in the New Testament. That if you are willing to forgive others, that God is willing to forgive you. But if you are unwilling to forgive others, God's not willing to forgive you. If you are willing to show mercy to others, God's willing to show mercy to you. If you're not willing to show mercy to others, God's not willing to show mercy to you. Measure for measure. Now look at verse 14 and the heart, and we close. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone says he has faith, but does not have works? Can such faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but you do not give them what the body needs, what good is that? What good have you done? How have you benefited that person? To say, keep warm, keep well fed, do the best you can, go in peace, go in shalom. Basically, they're saying what? That you have spiritualized. This is our version of I'll pray about it. Somebody comes to you and they shares with you a need that they had, and you say to them, I'll pray about it. What good have you done that person? What is the actuality? What is the reality? What good have you done that person? Nothing. You say, well, I took it to God. Listen very carefully, so we can close. Pay attention. Listen very carefully. You took it to God. But God brought it to you. God did not bring the situation to you so that you could turn around and dump it back in His lap. God brought it to your attention. God brought it to your notice so that you would do something about it. I.e., God wanted to use you in this circumstance. That's why He brought it to your attention. This is why we say in Judaism that God, who is in control of everything, and nothing happens by circumstance or by chance or by luck. It doesn't just so happen. That event occurred in your sight, in your hearing, by your attention. You showed attention to that circumstance, that situation, because God put it in front of you. Why? Not so that you could spiritualize it and dump it back in His lap, but so that you would do something about it. This is what it means to love your neighbor as yourself. If you were in the same circumstance, how many of us would want someone to say, I'll pray about it? And how many of us would prefer someone just do something about it? Come on.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Something about it.
Do something about it. That's the truth of the matter. If I were in a circumstance, I would want someone to do something about my circumstance and help me out. Well, I am to have that mind towards the other people, towards the other person. How I would want to be treated is the way I should treat the other person. Saying what? Okay, for us men. You're driving down the highway and you hear the thump, 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 thump. Right? And you know what that sound is, right? What's that sound? Thump, 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 thump. Flat tire. Right? You pull over. You open the trunk and there's the spare. You get the spare out and it goes psh, which means what? How many of you have been there? I've been there a few times. The spare is also flat. Now what? Now you're out here in the middle of nowhere and you have a flat tire. What do? Well, today's age, most of us have cell phones. But let's say you're out of cell phone range. Let's say you're up in the middle of the King Ranch area. And you don't have a signal. Now what?
You're hoping somebody can buy.
You're hoping someone will stop to help you. Correct?
Yep.
I've been there. And here comes a car. And what? Most of the cars are what? Shoo, shoo, shoo. Now let's switch positions. How many of us are the one in the car driving by? And we see that person in need and we don't stop to help them. We were on our way back from California a few years back. And we had just entered into Arizona. Kingman, Arizona, that area, between the border and Kingman, Arizona, desert, hot, dry, and this was summertime, and it was hot. And there was a man, an elderly man, who was driving alongside and he passed us. He had a truck, he passed us. And as he passed us, he came over into our lane. We're on the interstate. We're going 75, 80 miles an hour. He passes us and he pulls over. And just as he passes us, his tire blows. Literally, tread starts flying off the tire. We're there, and I'm seeing all this rubber coming at me. And he pulled over. Now, most people will do what in such a situation? You're driving behind that person. What do? Most people swerve and what?
Keep going.
Boom, hit the gas, keep on going, right? It's his problem. It's his tire, his problem, his truck, whatever. We did not. We followed him, we pulled over with him. He was an old man. He was in his 80s. He got out of the truck. We asked if we could help him. So Richard and Josh and myself, we got down under his truck and got his spare tire, big old truck tire, down, jacked up his truck, changed tires for him, and then followed him into the next little town so that he could get a new tire. Made sure that he made it into the gas station all right. While we were doing that, while we were changing his tire, I don't know how many cars passed us at highway speed, passing. Not one had stopped to help. I could not imagine what would have happened if that old man had been out there, had we not been there to help him. Why did he have that flat tire in front of us? To give us the opportunity to help him. God put him in that circumstance to put us in that circumstance. Do you see that? The reason why things happen in front of you is so that you can work alongside of your Father in doing something about it. And it is for this reason that we say, there's no need to pray for such things. Pray for the person, yes, but your prayer is of little value if you don't bring the potential into actuality, if you're not actually going to do something about it. God help those people. And God says, I put that person in front of you so that I could help them through you, by your means. I do not need to pray to ask God if I should help someone in need. God has already told me this is your responsibility. And so with that we say, Shalom, Ve'layla Tov.